Didn't do it. There we go. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Houston. We have a problem. I've got a wonderful new setup here in Streamlabs. Thank you so much to Enraged Goose Studios for making this for me. So there's still a lot of things for me to figure out how to work, but I can bounce between things like, and go there. I can say, hey, there's Google Earth. Let's play with Google Earth, or let's be on Chrome or whatever. So woohoo! Look at that. Just one little click and I'm there. And I'm big again. This is so much fun. All right, everybody. So the news today, let's see here. Last night was revealed that all the major banks have to collect $1 trillion in capital each to weather the coming storm. Ethereum moved to the London fork, which is part of their 2.0, which supposedly will make transferring Ethereum back and forth way cheaper. So I'm going to start trying to see if I can get Problemo coins to everybody who's on the Patreon, which will be finally fun. Get your 10,000 Problemo coins. What's the other thing? Bond prices took a $2 hit today. So, maybe people are starting to notice that the debt ceiling crisis is doing its thing. So, yeah, everyone is guessing what shirt I'm going to wear. You are so wrong. Cream with paisleys today. Ha ha! Suckers. Okay. Let's see here. Oh man, there's already a whole bunch of questions in here. So let's jump in there. Protege Sun says, great talk with Gherkin yesterday. Yeah, I went on Pickle Finance with Gherkin yesterday, and that is a very, very, very smart man. Holy moly. I was just blown away. He's able to see things in such a unique way that I can't even comprehend how he approaches that stuff. So Protege Sun says, great talk with Gherkin. Could you expand further on when he was talking about the illiquidity issues and setting limit orders that won't process on time due to the volatility? Any remedies? Yeah, so traditionally we've got a T+2, right? So if a hedge fund has to get liquidated, and this is outside of that SFT rule where the hedge fund will give all their assets as collateral and take a giant loan from someone. But if a hedge fund has to liquidate, has to sell all their stuff, it's going to take 2 days to process all those things before they actually have the cash necessary to do the buying. So there may be buying that takes place before there's ever any cash to settle that. So the T+2 could be a really weird situation in that case. And as this liquidation happens and the hedge funds get eviscerated, we may see banks and prime brokers have to step in and buy this stuff, and there may be moments where if say the trading computers from the DTCC take over, they might be making a whole bunch of buys long before they ever have the cash to actually settle those purchases. So they may be buying, and waiting on some sort of printer to spool up at the Federal Reserve, so that everyone gets their treasury notes and cash to actually close out those positions. So that's what we're talking about. There may be some serious liquidity issues going across as the MOASS happens, simply because there's so much money that's going to have to be involved. And we're talking amounts of money that have never before been transferred for one commodity or security in history. So this is a very, very unique situation, and that's kind of what we were talking about on his show yesterday. Okay. It's actually raining here in Seattle for the first time in a long time. It's wonderful. I have a burn pile I need to burn of Amazon boxes and whatnot, and I'm so happy that I can finally do something about it because there's been a burn ban for the last couple of months. Okay. That's Project Sun's question. Jersey's trying to get my old Twitter back. That'd be wonderful. I've got a whole bunch of old jokes in there though that just I miss. And I feel weird if I have to like go make all the same jokes again. No, it's like plagiarizing myself. Okay. Robert Lubin, please give us some good news and hope on GME and AMC. Well, I mean, no one's closing positions, so it's still going to pop. That's where we are. Gherkin was suggesting yesterday on his show that a lot of the pressure from lenders has been for these hedge funds to start closing out smaller positions with less famous stocks than GME, and this is to keep, when the MOASS goes puny pop and everything climbs and rises, they won't have to worry as much about the Blackberries and Nokias and things like that. Instead, they'll just have the one stock of GameStop to worry about. I'm not quite on board with that, but I do think that this time is coming. We've got such a confluence of weird events coming before October. The government might run out of money. The banks have to somehow find like 10 to 30 trillion dollars to fill out their capital on hand so that they can handle a recession. We've got still have like a weird corporate debt bubble. We've got the repo and reverse repo going to war with each other. We've got the MOASS. We've got COVID Delta variant just being gnarly. Holy moly. And cases are rising at such a rate. A lot of people don't understand exponential growth. And so when you try to explain exponential growth to them, their brains just don't quite comprehend it. But, I think a lot of the people who are involved in GME can understand it, because we're going to see exponential growth in the stock price. But the number of cases in the U.S. are more than doubling in less than 2 weeks. Every like 10 days, it's doubling. So we went from 13,000 cases a month ago to over 100,000 cases a day today, which 2 weeks from now means 200,000 cases or more a day. And that puts us right back at the peak of the pandemic, which is pretty gnarly. So we might see things start to change with people's travel plans and live events and movie theaters, stuff like that. So there could be maybe not necessarily a shutdown by the government, but more the public at large taking a step back from their woohoo, I'm vaccinated train, because the virus has mutated and it's hitting younger people harder. And I was listening to All Things Considered on NPR yesterday, and they're interviewing a doctor from Springfield, Missouri, who was talking about the difference between last year and this year. And last year it was all older patients, 65 and older, that was in his hospital. About 40% were intubated, and maybe 1 in 10 were dying. This time around, there's more people in the hospital. They're between 20 and 40. 90% of them are intubated, and 20% of them are dying. So the numbers are just bonkers. So I wouldn't doubt, if we look at the fall, we see some sort of contraction as a result of people going, whoa, this is a little out of control. So that's one of the things that we have to keep paying attention to. But again, anytime the market shrinks, then the meme stocks go up, because we're negative beta stocks. So we do the exact opposite. So we are hedged against the market collapsing with what we have in GME and AMC and others. So I it's weird to like root for doomsday. That feels horrible. But that's where we are. That's where we are with these stocks. Susie Chi, thank you for super chat there, Susie. Okay. Oh, Andrew Stewart, chemistry question. How should I remove pitting and rust from an old butcher's knife? Oh, man. I would probably try to clean it with CLR, and then, scrub what you can off of it, and then put it on a grinder and just buff it out. That's probably the best way to do it, because you're not going to be able to like replace that rust pitting with actual new steel again. So you may have to just buff it out, grind it and buff it. That's what we do with the axes in the garage when they start to get that way. That's my my suggestion, Andrew. Okay. Dr. Stonk Brule, birds sketch me out. Do you expect to see a serious bird flu in the future? Very possible. The the problem is that the U.S. aid program. Let me grab. Okay, let me. Oh, one sec. Let me do my scene. I'm going to get rid of Google Earth. I'm going to bring up Chrome. I'm going to go to you and searching for next Ebola. New York Times. All right, here we go. So, in October of 2019, the government ended this USAID program that basically had American scientists all over the world and in multiple regions, hundreds of nations. And their job was, if they got wind of an outbreak of some kind, or a bird flu, a bat virus, swine flu, something like that, they would respond and just like help the farmers slaughter everything, burn the corpses, and then repay them for what they lost in their livestock. And this program ended in October of 2019. The whole thing got cut, and then COVID popped up, 2 weeks later. So these folks were hunting down, novel viruses that could cause all sorts of pandemics, and they don't exist anymore. And so I recommend this article. It's called "Scientists Were Hunting for the Next Ebola. Now the U.S. has cut off their funding." So we don't have the access anymore, or the ability anymore, to basically cut this stuff off, head it off at the pass. And that's one thing I think the U.S. government should probably invest in, because the more we push into the jungle, the more novel viruses we are going to encounter. And we've got a lot of people who live on the edge of society, and they might not have money or access to food, and they've got to hunt wild game, and they can be exposed to these novel viruses. Ebola came from bats, AIDS came from apes, coronavirus came from bats as well. We've got the swine flu, bird flu, MERS came from camels. So this jump from zoonotic viruses to humans is where these novel viruses just hit us hard. So we need these programs to protect us. Is it cheaper to pay $30 million a year for this USAID program, or pay $16 trillion in a year because a pandemic's wiping out the economy? You really have to weigh that in your head. What's cheaper? Being proactive is way cheaper. So the odds of a bird flu hitting us hard is much higher right now than it ever was, because we don't have these frontline people stopping in its tracks before it becomes a serious outbreak. So yeah, Dr. Stonk, you are correct to be sketched out by bird flu in the future. Okay, and thank you for the super chat. Number letters. Do you guys know what's going on when people are saying free roaring kitty? I don't think DFV has tweeted or anything in a while. He might, maybe a lawyer said, "Hey man, lay off on the tweets." They might want to try and pop you for collusion or something like that with trading the stock. So I bet he's just silent right now. Thin Watchdog wants to note that the $1 trillion due October 1st for the big banks is not a requirement to hold $1 trillion in cash. Correct. It's just $1 trillion in capital. So if it's bonds, stocks, other derivatives, futures, things like that, things that can be considered capital that might not be the most liquid thing in the world, but it contributes to the holdings of those banks. Benji Hissoler. Houston, Vanguard requires us to call them to make large block trades, likely causing hold times during MOASS. What are your thoughts on exit strategy considering potential hold times, delays? Go M's. Man, I don't know. My plan is to sell one share at a time. I don't own enough shares for me to do any large block trades. So that's a different realm. You may have to call them, or try to set limit orders for each individual share now if you can. If I don't know what Vanguard if they've got one of those limits into to how high you can set your limit orders. But that's interesting. I hadn't thought about there being speed bumps to those who have lots of shares. I mean, I know the people that pop in this chat that have like 50 or 100,000 shares of AMC alone. So, you guys are out there, and holy moly, high five, way to go. I'm not one of them. So, yeah, that is, I'll have to think about that. But you may have to just sell a few shares at a time and not do a whole block. Okay. Boo, 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 boo. Suavo 1983. Approximately how long should it take a normal NFT build to create 70 million NFTs if it wasn't in a GME situation? I don't know. I don't know enough about. I mean, I made my Problemo coins, minted those. It took like 2 hours to do 100 million Problemo coins. So my guess is to mint 70 million plus NFTs, probably something similar. It's all about computing power, and now they move to proof of work rather than mining, and I think it should be faster and cheaper and easier to do. Someone sent a link showing that like a 20 grand had gone into the GameStop account, which should be enough to get everybody their NFTs as a result. So I don't know, it shouldn't take more than a couple hours to actually mint all the ones needed. How they will get distributed, on the other hand, is going to be a different animal altogether. Somebody wrote their broker, maybe it was Fidelity, saying, "Hey, how are you going to deal with these NFTs?" And Fidelity was like, "We're not." And then there's a theory going by that is suggesting that GameStop is going to give the NFTs to the DTCC to distribute. The DTCC will say, we can't distribute this. And then will give GameStop the opportunity to request all their shares get pulled from the DTCC computers. I'm still trying to wrap my head around exactly how that works, but it would basically be a way of forcing the hand of the powers that be to admit how many naked shares there are out there. It's all speculation. We're just waiting to see what happens. David Ha, hey Houston, do you think metamaterials going to pop off next week? Yes. The T35 for the Torchlight shares prior to merger start kicking in on Monday. And then the following week is when the T35 for the new QSIP change on metamaterials start kicking in. So all the previous metamaterials shares that were traded on the Canadian market, those are gone, and all the nakeds that were created from that must be rectified. So I think metamaterials, I'm betting on it. I bought options basically betting that metamaterials is going to pop in the next couple of weeks. So, I hope. Josh Pet Pals, Tennessee asks, any thoughts on the super asteroids passing near or possibly through Earth's atmosphere in 2027, 2036? Okay, so if a super asteroid passes through our atmosphere, we're screwed. That means it's just going to hit us and we're dead. So it might be passing near us, like between us and the moon. The thing about trying to predict orbits for asteroids like that far out is that even the slightest margin of error, like 10,000ths of a decimal place or whatever, can mean thousands of miles difference in the orbital path. So what they do is they give a probability. Might say, oh, there's a 10% chance in 2027 that this large asteroid will pass close enough to the Earth to be of concern. And then when they get to next year, they can, oh, okay, so that 10% chance is now 8%. And then they get the following, okay, now it's 5%. Because they have a better idea of what the orbit's going to do, and they can be more precise. And also, we don't know if there are other interactions in those years between that asteroid and other gravitational bodies that may occur. And as another larger asteroid passes by and kind of tweaks the orbit a little bit. So, yeah, those super asteroids, we're looking at them using the Pan-STARRS telescope on Maui. Pan-STARRS is a really cool telescope. It's 4 1-meter mirrors that tie together with an interferometer, and they do these really wide field views of the sky, and they take pictures all night long. All night long they're taking pictures. And what they're looking for is any dot that's moved between the last time they took a photo, and then they point bigger telescopes at it, try and calculate the orbits of those objects, and see if A, it's something we already know about, or B, if it's something new, and if it is it going to come near the Earth? The program was originally funded by the U.S. Air Force, and so the Air Force supercomputers got first crack at all the images, because I think what they were doing was looking for monitoring certain satellites that belong to perhaps non-U.S. entities. And there's always the conspiracy theories that they're looking for aliens and stuff. I don't know. I have a friend that programmed the telescope, and he hasn't found any aliens yet. But yeah, the super asteroids passing nearby, those are the ones you have to worry about. But it's about once every 100 million years we get an extinction level asteroid or comet. And it's been 63 million years since the last extinction level comet. So we're getting close to that law of averages due date there. It's a good idea to keep our eyes peeled, but the odds of it happening in our lifetime, fairly low. The better chance we will have is finding the right one of those near Earth asteroids and sending a whole bunch of people to it to like drill the heck out of it and get precious metals and things. Much easier if they come by the Earth every once in a while to do that. Soli69, Houston, can you post the link with all the similar stocks that had also had mid-January squeeze? I'll have to find that link again, Soli. It got sent to me. Oh, it's in one of my Twitter DMs. I'll have to find it. I'll find it for you, and I'll try to put it in the description or something. Andrew Stewart, are viruses Mother Nature's way of culling the herd and reset the balance? Is our effect on the environment pushing this faster? That's kind of the epidemiologist take on it, is that as we push further and further out into the hinterlands, we come in more and more contact with animals that generally aren't near human beings. And the odds of a virus jumping from animal to human is much greater when that happens. And so what we're seeing is oftentimes these viruses are coming from regions that have very diverse ecosystems, jungles and forest. They often come from people that find themselves close to animals. So you can be farmers, things like that. So if a virus makes it from, say, a bat to a chicken, then the farmer who's farming chickens can be susceptible to that virus and spread it from there. It's all about, does the virus have a gain of function in that it can jump? It might be able to jump from a farmer that's ensconced in these chickens or pigs or something, and get the farmer, but will it go from the farmer to another human being? And so if it gets a gain of function where it can jump from person to person, that's when we have to start to worry. Is it Mother Nature's way of culling the herd? I mean, it ends up culling the herd, doesn't it? So I don't know if nature necessarily is planning it, or if it's just the way things go. You have to worry. You have to think about, when you're pushing into new realms, what new biodiversity are you being exposed to? And we're mowing down trees, and we're eating animals, and we're doing all sorts of stuff. So it always raises those possibilities that we would have a zoonotic virus make the jump. if you ever read Guns, Germs, and Steel, it talks about how the, the Europeans were so gross and so unsanitary and just got wiped out by plague after plague after plague after plague of these zoonotic infections. And eventually the people that survived had like super immune systems compared to the rest of the world. So when Europeans decided to like get on their little tall ships and head out around the world, they brought those diseases with them and just wiped out populations around half the earth, and made it so easy for Western Europeans to take over places like North America and South America, because we just killed them with our diseases. So it's, you know, it was unintentional biological warfare on the part of like the conquistadors and everyone else. You know, these diseases, they don't care about how buff you are, how strong you are. They just infect. That's what they do. They take over cells, they replicate, and they move on. That's their whole function in life. You know, the reason why we talk about like memes going viral is because virus is viral. That's you know. Okay. Protege Sun, sorry to go back. When we run into illiquidity problems, what do we expect we will see on our end, and how can we make the most of the situation we're having? Problems getting orders filled. Thanks so much. Yeah. So I think what we're seeing, and Gherkin pointed this out yesterday, is that there is a definite delay in payment for order flow. That when the market makers fill that bid-ask gap with nakeds, they wait days enough for the stock to have dropped, and then they fulfill those orders finally. Because they'll go in and actually like buy the real shares and fulfill those orders. This is what Citadel was getting in trouble for, was delaying that payment for order flow. Is that, you know, they were delaying it sometimes a couple of weeks and not fulfilling those orders. And that's when they got that fine summer of last year. You know, they delayed orders and made billions, but their fine was $700,000. So, you know, they're going to keep doing it. It's just the cost of doing business at that point. So, but the illiquidity problems, that, you know, we may see them buy, and worry about finding the cash later to close out those positions. Or we may see them buy, and then stop all of a sudden while they wait for more cash to come in, and they continue again. So that might make us see all sorts of jumps in the price over the period of the squeeze. That's it's one of those things like we're gonna have to just see how it happens. You know, it's probably gonna be one or the other, but I can't guarantee which one it's going to be. Dan Johnson, if you had 20,000, which one would you buy first, AMC or GME? I'm going to be buying GME mostly. I will probably diversify because I like to, you know, not put all my eggs in one basket. But I think GME is going to go bigger than AMC. So right now getting GME at 150 is a hell of a deal, considering that, you know, if you are lucky enough to be selling shares in the peak for millions, that's a hell of a gain right there. Euphoria Morning, Houston, did you hear of a UK hedge fund recently announcing they decided to short AMC? Obviously, all these fools think alike. No, I have not. If you have a link to the article, I would love to see it. That sounds like someone who's late to the party and maybe bumped their head along the way. Topical TV. Whoa! I just thought about you having a segment on NPR. That would be lit. Hey, if they want to put me on NPR, I'll do it. I would love to have the opportunity to someday be on Wait, Don't Tell Me. That is probably would be my dream. Peter Sagal has like the highest batting average of any comic I've ever listened to in my entire life. I would love to meet that man. If you guys don't ever listen to Wait, Don't Tell Me, please do. It is so funny. Jeremy Gavisk, sorry. Houston, saw an amazing video by Steve Mould on how quartz crystals are used in digital clocks. What are some other common piezoelectric crystals. Oh man, quartz is really common. Uh, I mean, silica crystals in transistors and computer chips, semiconductors. Um, I'm really bad at solid state physics. I only have like a rudimentary knowledge of it, but for the most part, with solid state crystals, and oftentimes they're grown in labs because you want them to be a specific way, is that you'll have like a pure crystal on one side and a crystal with certain inclusions on the other, and you smack them together so that they get some covalent bonding between the two of them. And due to the impurities on the one side, it causes free electrons to happen and to pass through the crystals. So like the basic way a silicon computer chip works is you got one side that's pure, one side that has random aluminum atoms inside of the crystal matrix. And because aluminum doesn't have the same number of electron bonding points as silica does, is it forces these free electrons to go back and forth. And that's about the extent of my solid state physics knowledge. Perhaps there's somebody in here who knows a lot more than about that stuff. I've always wanted to like take solid state classes, but the college I went to didn't really offer them. They just had like when you took your quantum mechanics course, they're like, this, and then they moved on to more focusing on stars. So maybe it's one of those things. I should. The community college I teach at has a solid state course. I should just take one of those classes because I can do it for free, and finally get more info on that. There's fun things you can do with them. There's a group called what was it? The Phone Losers of America. They're this telephone hacking group that was based out of Portland, and they used to do funny things like they discovered the extension system at like a Walmart, and they discovered you could call up the Walmart and say, hey, can you put me through to extension 010? And the person's like, okay. And all of a sudden they're on the PA system, and there was no way to get them off the PA system without like cutting the cable to the entire phone line. And so they would like do their own radio shows in Walmarts and Home Depots that way. But one of the things they had was there's a 10 megahertz quartz crystal that's inside of every modern toaster. And it's a crystal that's used to keep the toaster from like catching on fire. It's some sort of mechanism in there to keep the toasters from burning down your house. And you can take the crystal out of it, and you can take a hand radio and replace the 5 megahertz crystal with the 10 megahertz crystal from the toaster, and all of a sudden you're on the same radio frequencies as like every fast food restaurant possible. And so they would go around and get near a fast food restaurant and just start taking random orders and making random orders and just screwing with people. And the audio is so funny. Like these poor minimum wage workers, like they don't pay me enough to deal with this crap. So this is 20 years ago when they're doing that stuff. But there's fun things you can do with different crystals that come out of those devices. I think it's Phone Losers of America is the name of that group. I would check them out. They're funny. Okay. Euphoria morning. Geek question for you, Houston. Having studied physics, I found vector calculus very difficult to get my head around. What's the hardest math you've used in what application? Oh, dude. Quantum mechanics was the gnarliest. Psi stuff that, I mean, to this, my brain has just erased all of it. Like, I have a vague idea of how psi works to try and, estimate the energy levels inside of a hydrogen atom, and then beyond, like, that stuff was so brutal. I partial differentials were really hard too. I worked really hard in that partial differentials class, and I've got total calculexia, which is terrible for somebody that is in a math-based profession. But like I like to flip numbers in my brain. And I remember I had, I could probably find it in my files somewhere. In my partial differentials equations course, I had this problem, and it took like 10 pages front and back of notebook paper to go through the entire thing. And then we had this answer sheet. And we had to write the answer in the answer sheet and then turn the whole packet in. Well, for 10 pages, I'm doing the math. And the answer is something like x to the 1/3 plus 2x to the 2/3 and whatever, and it goes on. And then for some reason on one of those coefficients, I flipped the 1/3 to or 2/3 to 3/2 or whatever. And the teacher just went X. But you can see my work for 10 pages. I had the right answer, but when I put it in the answer box, I just flipped it, and she had like no sympathy. It's wrong. I took a mission planning course in my undergraduate, and I did them also in my graduate program. But in my undergraduate, we had this NASA program where you would launch objects and try to get them into orbit and then get them out to other planets and stuff. And every single time I'd forget to carry a 1, or I'd flip a fraction around, and I would just send my crew out into the blackness of space, never to come back. If I work at NASA, you do not want me being the guy who double checks the math, because I will just send the crew off into the void and they'll never return. So, yeah, but the psi.psi was probably the hardest stuff I've had to deal with. And the other really hard things to do is sometimes knowing how to apply an equation to a unique situation. Like, you have some sort of change of rate on something, and your brain might not acknowledge if it's slowing down or speeding up, and not know how to, it's this type of integral I have to apply. And it gets really hard to like apply that math without having, a template to go on. I am in awe of people that can easily, like, oh, this is how you apply these problems. Those data science guys that I have a friend that does data science research for Amazon, and his ability to apply variables to equations is absolutely mind altering. He's a freak genius, and I'm in awe at all times. You guys want more math stories? Everyone's like, all right. I don't even know what psi.psi is. Don't worry about it. Okay. Crystalline Banana. Wade, what do you think of the Crypto Kitten's possible connection to the GME crypto dividend? I think it's been sort of a unique, what would be the term I put there? Sort of a mascot that they're associating with that NFT dividend, because they had the cat in the banana suit that was on the moon, right? In that little game they put on their NFT page. And so I think kittens in general, judging from, Roaring Kitty and others, just seems to be this general mascot for these things. So I don't know. I think we're going to see lots of kitten stuff related to that. Matt Newton, super chats. Hey Houston, with the debt ceiling limit possibly not getting raised, what's the safest place to move 401k savings? To gold, if Fidelity offers it? Yeah, I mean, when the market takes a dump, people jump to gold as like a safe place to hang out. So like those metals, precious metals and semi-precious metals, often people will go there. They'll go to platinum. They'll go to silver. That's just kind of how it works. I don't know. Is there a way in 401ks? Can you invest in like a gold mutual fund? I've never really investigated that. But I'd assume so, because you should be able to do all those trades you normally would in a 401k. That's not a terrible idea. I would not invest in bonds. if we're about to default on them, I would get the hell out of bonds if that was the case. Yeah, all right. I'm sorry. Oh, goodness, a whole bunch of super chats that I have missed here. There's Andrew Stewart. There's his super chat. And Jess from Dax. They discovered a black hole that warps space-time so much that astronomers saw flashes of light from its far side. Thoughts? Yes, that's Einstein's theory of general relativity basically established that gravity wells can bend sunlight. So we theorized you could do it with black holes because our own sun can do it. I'm gonna mess up my dates here. So Einstein came out with general relativity in 1915? And that's while World War I is going on. There was an expedition to Crimea around that time to try and observe during an eclipse. So Einstein had postulated that during an eclipse, the moon passes in front of the sun, blocks out the light. There should be a star that mathematically would be behind the sun, but the sun would have bent the light of that star, so it made it appear as if the star was next to it. So they did this expedition out there in the middle of the war, and the Russians were like, "You're spies, get out." So they ended up not being able to do it. So a few years later, they went to, they did 2 expeditions, one to Africa and one to South America. And the shadow of the eclipse is going to pass by both places. And they finally observed when that happened that yeah, the star that should be behind the sun all of a sudden was visible off to the side because the light bent around the sun. We can see that gravitational lensing in large galaxy clusters. There are galaxies that should be hidden behind these things that appear as these like weird strips of light that are bent around the galaxy clusters. So this was the first time we'd seen it happen with a black hole specifically. That article came out yesterday, day before. Someone sent it to me one of those days. So the way gravitational wells work in general relativity, the theory of general relativity, is that you can imagine that all space, we can divide space into a plane at some point, and that plane is kind of like a trampoline. If you throw a bowling ball on a trampoline, it dips, right? So if you took a bowling ball, it dips. You put a human being on, it dips a little more. If you put, I don't know, a wrecking ball on a trampoline, it will just hit the ground. So the bigger the gravity well is, the deeper the gravity well is, the more likely it is for that light to bend around it. And light will act like any other gravitational object. So you have a planet orbiting a star. That planet is essentially falling around that star at all times. You can have an object coming really fast from outside the solar system, and it might get close to a star and bend in either a parabolic or hyperbolic arc and then take off. You can have like an event horizon of a black hole where that's the point where the acceleration of gravity is greater than the speed of light, so light can no longer escape. Well, that's also at that event horizon is when if something is tangential to the event horizon, that's the orbital velocity of light. So light will orbit at the speed of light around the event horizon. So this is a weird thing that blows people's minds. So if you are the indestructible man and you are descending into a black hole, right? And you pass the event horizon. And as you go through the event horizon, rather than looking down at your feet, which are probably getting stretched into spaghetti, you look out to the side. And what do you see? You see your own butt, because the light from your butt is orbiting the black hole and hitting you in the face. Then you turn around and you watch yourself turn around and you'll see your butt again. So when you fall into a black hole, you have the opportunity to see your butt. But also, check this out. You fall into a black hole and you look at your butt, cool. You turn, you look at your butt again, cool. Instead of looking down at your spaghetti feet, you look up. And what do you see? Well, all the light from the universe is bending around this event horizon and falling in at some point. So you're watching the whole of the universe, probably just a big giant bright light, but it's the whole entire universe. And as you fall into this black hole and you start accelerating towards the speed of light, time dilates. So time slows down for you, but to the outside world, when you look at the outside world, it's speeding up. It's going like crazy, like at supermax fast motion. And you will be able to watch the entirety of the universe end in the time it takes for you to fall through the event horizon, that black hole, and you'll be able to see all of it all at once. It's pretty messed up. General relativity and special relativity. What do you, Einstein? How do you, breaks brains, man. It's absolutely wild. So yeah, there's some thoughts on black holes for you. Mark super chats. Any thoughts on rogue quantum gravitational waves? They happen. Now that we've got our gravitational detectors set up at Hanford and I forget the name of the one in Louisiana, we see a lot more gravitational waves pass through us than we ever thought we would. Those gravitational waves, they happen as 2 large gravitational bodies start to spiral into each other. Neutron stars, black holes, things like that are really dense. And as they get closer and closer to each other, their center of gravity gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And it causes a flux in the gravitational waves that come out. And those waves pass through the universe and they slightly warp space-time as they do. Because because remember it's this trampoline type thing, and if you have two bowling balls that are spiraling into each other into the center of the trampoline, you're going to get these weird waves that come out from it. And so space works kind of the same way. And so we got rogue gravitational waves that come from all directions all the time. And we're getting better and better at pinpointing them and pointing our telescopes in the direction where we think they're coming from. And we're seeing cool things. We're seeing, very massive black holes that are like 50 times the mass of our sun crashing into each other and making, 100 times the mass of our sun black holes. We're seeing stars get eaten up by black holes or neutron stars. We see cool stuff with it. The technology is so rad that we're able to do. And this is stuff that, they theorized, started building these things 30 years ago, and took them like 30 years to calibrate them just enough so that we're only now realizing the potential of these detectors. It's cool. They're cool. Okay. Matt Newton. Oh, sorry. You already asked that one. Already answered the one. That's the 401k one. Sorry. Oh, there's the one I missed. Fabian Garcia asks, Houston, do you think apes will have a hard time getting their sell orders filled during MOASS? I don't think it'll be hard for them to sell. I think it'll be hard for the T+2 to actually happen within 2 days, because I think there'll be liquidity problems that everyone who has to do the buying will be having liquidity problems. So it may take a long time to close those orders. They may sit in limbo for a while. Yeah, that's something to consider. People they have to buy these things. What are you looking at, buddy? What are you looking at? They have to buy these things, but they may not have the money to do it at the time they purchase this stuff. Yeah. All right. Euphora Morning says, yeah, I had a friend who is so intuitive with applying the math to a problem. It's wholly impressive. This is furthermore why I chose not to pursue a PhD in physics. Yeah, I had lots of friends that... you give me the weird look, buddy. Why are you giving me the weird look? Lots of friends that were like in my physics program, and applying the math to physics was not their strong suit, so they ended up just being math majors. And like, hey, they got a problem in a book, they can do that all day long. They can teach that to people, they can do whatever, but applying it was not their strong suit. Okay. Invest in gold mining companies. That's from Vimy385. That's pretty good. Yeah, you got Rio Tinto, you got Barrick, you got a couple of Extrata. Who are the other big ones out there? There's others. But they'll do well. And these gold companies, these big mining companies, they've got tons of mines all over the place that they shutter when the price goes below a certain level. And then they open them back up and start pumping out more gold again when the price hits that level, because, that whole supply and demand thing. And it might cost them a certain amount to pull gold out of these mines, and all of a sudden they become economical when the economy starts tripping and falling on itself. Boo, boo, boo. Don't buy paper insurance, buy the insurance company. Frederick Miles, that's good advice. Bill Coyne, if the debt ceiling is not raised, the world economy goes down the drain. China and Russia move in. Not going to happen. We say that, but there are some really dumb people in Congress that think they're postulating on the debt ceiling, and like puffing their chest is a great way to win elections, because intuitively human beings think, oh, debt is bad. It's not. Debt is not bad. Debt's debt. Debt you can't pay is bad, and if you have the ability to pay that debt and you somehow start refusing to, that's when it's bad. Not raising the debt ceiling is not getting rid of that debt. It's just defaulting on it and ruining everything. So, we have to like talk to the stupid members of Congress who won't be willing to raise the debt ceiling. they're dumb. And there's nothing else we can do about it. Except for like, hey dummy, just pass this thing. They'll probably still vote against it, but enough people of the Republican Party will probably be like, this, we're on the precipice for so long, we made our point, we'll pass it now. That's usually what happens. Okay. Andrew Stewart. There will be micro black holes. Is there a mass limit? So there's a mass limit to make a black hole. Inside the center of a star, you've got this dense degenerate core. It's via electron degeneracy. So you have all this fusion happening around it. So in the case of our sun, we're fusing hydrogen into helium, and then that helium is getting packed into the core, and it's squishing on itself. And it's this degeneracy is essentially the electrons of the helium atoms don't like each other because they're the same charge. And so those electrons are getting squished, and they're getting pushed to higher and higher energy levels. And so more and more of these helium atoms can squish into each other and into this degenerate core. And I like to think of it as, like when I teach a class and trying to describe electron degeneracy, is that I've got a classroom that'd be like 25 seats in the class, and maybe 20 of those seats are taken. And when my students come in, they sit wherever they want, right? They've got their choice. There's they can pick those seats. There'll be 5 empty ones or so. And so I say, hey, that's the natural energy level of students in this classroom. Now, if we put 5 more people in here, all the chairs get filled up, all the energy levels are filled. So what happens if I bring in 50 more people? Where do they go? Well, they're going to be sitting on the floor. They're going to be leaning against the wall. Some might be sitting on desks. But the energy level of students in that classroom starts to change outside of what's naturally comfortable, right? And if I put another 100 people in that classroom, we've got people standing, squishing up against each other, and they have no choice. The room's getting hot and sweaty. People don't like it. And then I bring another 500 people, and all of a sudden everyone's just squished up against each other. It might be like human beings, popping and turning into like red goo. And I bring in 1,000 people, and everything just all of a sudden the human body can't handle it anymore, and it just becomes this slurry of like pink slime that McDonald's burgers are made out of. And that's when the electron degeneracy can no longer sustain itself, and those electrons don't have the strength to avoid each other anymore, and they start to pass right through each other, and we get neutron degeneracy, and all of these electrons bond with the protons, and everything becomes neutrons. It becomes this weird, inert, giant atom that's super dense. And the density is absolutely nuts. So this is at 1.4 solar masses. So 1.4 times the size of our own sun is when this core collapses into neutron degeneracy. And this is when the neutrons are now bouncing off each other, and they won't allow each other to squish anymore. And then you get to the limit where the neutrons can no longer support each other, which I think is like 8 solar masses, somewhere around there. I have to look that one up. I can't remember. And then all of a sudden, the neutrons collapse into each other, and you get the singularity, you get the black hole. So it takes a whole bunch of density to be able to get to that point. You need suns and suns and suns worth of mass to be able to get to singularity that forms a black hole. We can do theoretical limits, like if the Earth was to become a black hole, we could squish the entire mass of the Earth down to something where the event horizon would be like 3 centimeters across. So the entire Earth, if the Earth were a black hole, could be something that's like this big, maybe not much bigger than an inch. Our own sun would be a quarter mile across or something, and Jupiter might be like a meter across. But whether those small, tiny micro black holes exist or not is a matter of how effective Hawking radiation might be in evaporating a previously large black hole. And while Hawking radiation may be a reality, that's when you get the matter and antimatter appearing out of nowhere, and the antimatter falls into the black hole, and the regular matter flies off into space, so that antimatter, combines with a piece of matter inside the black hole and erases a bit of it from existence. That is still a hypothesis and hasn't been seen and applied anywhere. So that's the only way you can get a micro black hole, as far as I know. There we go. Chris Taylor. Thank you for the super chat there. Nick Callis. I hope I say that right. How much of these short positions hurting? How much are these short positions hurting the hedge funds? Are they able to profit on their investments enough to counter their losses? I don't think so. Um, the best example, because that's the data I have, is from Melvin, and back during the January squeeze, every $11 GameStop went up, Melvin lost $1 billion. And we saw from their numbers that after their first quarter, they lost 50% of their clients' money. And so they lost a lot of their clients were like, you know what, you guys suck, I'm pulling my money out, and then they lost more. And Melvin didn't just short GameStop. They shorted Cost. They shorted AMC. They shorted BlackBerry. They shorted Rocket Mortgage. They shorted all these different companies that were seeing weird pops during the baby squeeze. And so, if you've got large positions on, large short positions on AMC where there's 500 million shares and you shorted, let's say you shorted 100 million shares. That means every $10 AMC goes up, you lose $1 billion, right? So, I don't see them having made good bets with that money to counteract their losses. They don't have enough assets under management to do it, and these hedge funds don't work like a normal mutual fund or something would, where you buy long positions and you just hold over a period of time. They have a certain amount of long positions that they have. And that's the money from their clients. To join a hedge fund, you have to invest at least $1 million as entry fee, and a lot of them have, like Citadel only had like 16 people invested in their entire fund. So these people have over $1 billion each in that fund. What they do is they buy treasury bonds, blue chips, things like that, like long position stuff, and then they get this margin that's basically a loan that's 30 times or more those assets they have under management. And then they use that margin to play short-term poker with it. They gamble. And they're betting like, hey, if we do this deal in 5 months, we can make $500 million profit. And then we'll pay off that part of the margin, do it all over again. And so they bet on these short-term situations. And the problem is that all these hedge funds discovered a loophole, which is reg show, and discovered that you can short this stuff, from a legitimate share price down to zero. And if they play that short long enough and they get that price down to zero, they never have to pay taxes on it, and they never have to worry about paying back the shares they borrowed or the shares that they naked shorted. It just gets swept under the rug and forgotten about. And they did this game for 30 years, and they made just killings off of it. And all of a sudden, that game doesn't work anymore. They can't short whatever they want out of existence, and they can't count on Jim Cramer to badmouth the stock for them and to drive the price down further, because people are discovering that Jim Cramer's full of shit, and they aren't buying into it. The retail investors have learned how to counteract this, and all they do is they buy and hold, and they buy and hold, and as long as they hold longer than the hedge fund can sustain huge losses on these short positions, then they win. And that's where we are, is we're holding until these short hedge funds are going to get liquidated out of existence, and then we win. So that's your short hedge fund position. I don't think there's a way out for them with their other investments, because they really don't have the room to take on more margin at this point, because they're so like deep down in debt via these short positions at the moment that they don't have much room to play with anymore. Just one more super chats. Houston, have you looked into the amendment to the infrastructure bill, which people are saying would not allow GME to send a crypto dividend? I saw a blurb about that just before it came on that was like, would not allow proof of work for crypto. Seemed really weird. It had to be for mining, which is the most inefficient, energy intensive way to do it, and is absolutely stupid. So hopefully that amendment does not get passed. We've got a month basically until Congress is back in session, so we need to hammer our representatives and get them to block that. all that's going to do is create a really weird black market for crypto and help short hedge funds in the process. So I don't think it's a great idea for that to be in the bill. I'll have to read more about it, but from what I read so far, it seems like a really silly, dumb thing for Congress to do, because the long-term implications are going to be catastrophic, and it's just going to force people to continue to have these huge mining operations that consume power at absolutely silly rates, especially when most of the power for the stuff is coming from coal-fired plants anyway. I think mining Bitcoin alone was the same energy output as the entire nation of Argentina last year, which is just bonkers. We need to do better. We need to have better systems for creating these cryptocurrencies than what we're doing right now. I missed a couple super chats here. Let's see here. Jeremy Gavisk again. T35 for AMC's June FTD starts on the 10th and goes to the 21st. We should have seen some buying today, right? Doesn't T+2 apply? Yeah, well, the last time we had a T35 come in June, they just took those shares and they just swapped that debt with somebody else, reassigned the name to it, and reset the whole thing again. So I don't know if we're going to see that buying happen, because they seem much more intent on passing the buck than they are on actually doing their job and closing these positions. There needs to be SEC needs to make a rule about if you're going to do a debt swap on this, the T35 carries with it. It shouldn't reset. There should be no way to reset this stuff at all, ever. It should always be a hard date if you're going to have it. Otherwise, then what's the point? Okay. Parsa Hamidine. If matter and antimatter appear in a vacuum at event horizon, and only the antimatter is sunk into the black hole will lose mass. Isn't the same thing true about matter? Yeah, in general. So it's a strange, weird thing. I mean, in the room you're in right now, there's a probability that a piece of antimatter and a piece of matter will peer into existence. They don't get very far from each other. They collide with each other. They disappear and they leave behind a gamma ray photon. It happens everywhere. The odds of it happening, in the room you're in aren't great, but they exist. And when you get into the vastness of space, the odds of it happening in large areas is greater and greater and greater. The problem with Hawking radiation, the idea that these black holes can evaporate due to the antimatter falling in, is that there's as big a probability that the piece of matter will fall in and the antimatter will go out into space and then eviscerate something out there, and so that the black hole actually gains matter. So it's probably a wash over time. That's the one issue I have with Hawking radiation. I can't remember the guy's name. When I was an undergraduate, we had this dude come from Caltech who was like a black hole master, and one of my friends asked him a question that was something I'd never thought of, which, if you're in a spaceship and you're next to a black hole and you make one of the astronauts walk the plank and fall into the black hole, right? So as this guy is falling into the black hole, time slows down for him. And so if you are watching him, it looks like he freezes in place and never makes any further, because he starts accelerating so fast into that black hole that the way time dilation works is you start going at your time, he starts slowing down. And what he sees when he looks out is he sees the ship just sit there forever and, rust away and disappear into the bleakness of space. But you will never live long enough to see something fall into a black hole. And if that's the case, how do black holes ever grow if we can never witness a particle fall into a black hole but due to time dilation? And this guy from Caltech had no answer. He's like, I don't know. But we know they grow, because that's the only way we see the accretion prisms, we see the material falling into them, but we just can never actually see a particular particle fall in because of time dilation. It looks like it takes an eternity for it to happen. These are the weird things. When I teach the day of relativity, to my students. I tell them, I'm like, this is the only class I'm going to teach you this week. It's going to be 45 minutes long, and your brain is going to be useless and never work again. Like the whole next 2 weeks, you'll be in other classes, and you'll just be like thinking about beams of light and orbital patterns around black holes and being turned into spaghetti, and their heads just can't comprehend anything else. I ruin them. So week 8 of astronomy is always my most fun class to teach because they just get so quiet. Their brains just like pop. Oh, it's a blast. Okay. Eric Salinas. After MOASS, will the banks do anything stupid with our money when we transfer from the brokerage account? The banks always do something stupid with people's money. You have to remember that when you have money, you are no longer a regular person. You are a private client. So you have access to high liquidity accounts that normal human beings do not have access to. You'll have access to insurances that normal human beings do not have access to. You'll have access to interest rates normal human beings do not have access to. You will be part of the elite at this point. So it's very hard for the banks to screw with people who are rich, because people who are rich have very expensive lawyers. So it's much more likely that your Wells Fargos force your average consumer to take on all sorts of weird accounts to meet quotas and break the law than it would be for them to do it to a rich person. Because a rich person, they have access to tools and privilege that the average person does not, and so they don't mess with the rich people in the same way. And you know, the reason why the only American who went to prison from the '08 crisis was Bernie Madoff is because Bernie Madoff messed with rich people. He took the rich people's money and he in his Ponzi scheme, and he ruined the wealth of rich people. The folks who ruin the wealth of poor people, they never saw a day in prison. That's the way it works. So once we get our MOASS money, we will be of a more gilded group than we are now. And we can start talking with our bottom lip and sipping martinis at the club during the day. That we will have entered a new realm. So yeah. Thanks, Houston, for everything. Everyone Google senior aides and email or talk in person. Representatives and senators. They will listen to constituents. It's true. They will listen to you. Don't send form letters. Make it unique and personal to each and every one of them. And they're much more likely to pay attention to that. Like, and then if you just copy and paste a form letter and have 10 million people send the same letter to them, they go to that. But if you make it personal, they will listen to you. And that's why I want to, perhaps at the end of September, beginning of October, if I have a chance, I might try to do a Washington, D.C. trip. And if people are out in D.C. and want to join me, I'm going to try and go door to door to every rep and senator I can and see what kind of personal meetings I can get with them to talk about, regulation of the financial market. So, these representatives and these senators, they have a lot on their plate, and the only time they can often pay attention to a singular issue is if you bring it to their attention. So if you folks want to join me in this, I'll try to get something organized. And I don't know, I got my trip to my friend's wedding coming up. I gotta think about that one first. But we might not lobby them with like, hey, here's a bunch of money for your campaign, because we don't have those assets yet. But attaching a face to a story is very important with a lot of reps, and they respond to that. So if you guys want to help me organize something like that, let's do it. Let's head out there and end of September or beginning of October. I do have to look at what my class schedule is going to be. That might be, it might be all online again by then anyway. So yeah, so let's do something about that. BT Money Education. I'm a 42-year-old felon that is trying to teach my kids how to invest legally, and I do not know what to say when my 7-year-old knows when there is 9-to-1 buy to sell ratio, price should go up, not down. WTF. Yeah, that's all dark pools, man. That's the dark pools doing their manipulation business, and I'm hoping that the SEC starts to regulate that stuff either pre or post MOASS as a result. And investing legally, once you're rich, you just care about keeping your wealth, right? And those rich folks, they just put their money into Vanguard funds and into dividend stocks, and they set it and forget it. And every once in a while, there might be some play that they know they might make 5 or 10x on, and they'll do that. But for the most part, they just want their money to make 8 to 10% year over year, and that's it. And I'm hoping we'll all get to the point where we can just set it and forget it, rather than be so concerned in watching the market every day. Because quite frankly, I would rather go surfing or hiking or skiing or hang out with my friends than spend my days worrying about the interactions day to day in the market. I do it because the potential to retire is there, but there's other things that I'd rather spend my time doing. So, yeah. So you tell your 7-year-old that there's market manipulation, and we're working on fixing that. Dario Salinas, what's the most accurate scientific movie? Ooh, man. Well, I mean, it depends if we're doing sci-fi or if we're doing real life ones. So, like the Chernobyl miniseries was brilliant. My God, was that just an absolute brilliant way of explaining complicated nuclear physics to the public. It was, I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen the Chernobyl miniseries that was on HBO a couple years ago, it is not only brilliant filmmaking, but the way that they were able to explain these processes to the layperson was absolutely just dynamite. But that's a real world example. That's a more biographical type film. Sci-fi wise, man, what would be really good? The Expanse is pretty good TV show wise. And another one was Firefly. Firefly did a great job because they showed there's no sound in space, and I appreciate it when my science fictions have no sound in space. And they also show, like, Star Wars, you got these ships arcing and bending as they fly along. There's a vacuum in space. What are they banking on? So you need jets going pss, 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 pushing the ships different ways, and that's how they fly around. They do that with The Expanse. Movie wise, I'm trying to think of a good one. The Alien films are pretty good with how they do their space travel. 2001 does a pretty good job. Man, I'll have to ponder on that one a little bit more, see which ones are more accurate sci-fi movie wise. The space one, you're more often to find accurate space related ones. Like, what they do with disaster films is they often just take ridiculousness and they I don't know, like I remember it was The Day After Tomorrow. About the climate change and stuff. They have this point where, like, the thermosphere drops down and freezes everyone. Everything becomes frozen. The thermosphere is 70 degrees Fahrenheit. It's called the thermosphere because it's this weird area where all these particles, solar particles, are like just eviscerating in the atmosphere, and so it's really warm in that region. So the thermosphere would come down and warm everything. It wouldn't cool it. And when air descends, it warms, so it would get even hotter. Because air for every 1,000 feet air descends, it warms like 5 degrees. So it would get really warm if that air from the thermosphere dropped down. So they do weird things like that. And they like to always make, like, weird, unobtainium and weird metals that would never exist. Yeah. George, if we went to Mars and interfered with any possible forms of life, life's possible evolution in a negative way, how would you feel? I don't know. Anything that would be like an ecosystem on Mars would probably be bacteria related or something similar. We know there's no anaerobic bacteria there, because if there's anaerobic bacteria, there wouldn't be percolate in the soil. They would all turn to chlorides. So my guess is Mars is dead. But if there was life there, I'd hope we'd maintain it, because it would be some sort of biodiversity we wouldn't have before. Yeah, I'm not too worried about messing with life on Mars, because I think what we'll find when we go to Mars is we might find evidence there was life when Mars was covered in oceans prior to its core solidifying, when there's still a magnetic field and still volcanics pumping out gases. But I don't think we're going to find living life there. Chaku Seki. I think the Jetsons had the most accurate portrayal of space travel. Question: how are people calculating the floor prices for AMC or GME? Thanks. I think how they're calculating floor prices is purely gut. Is that, back in February, everyone was like $100,000 floor for GameStop. And by April, it was $1 million floor for GameStop. And by June, $10 million floor for GameStop. And so the more people you have believing that price, the more likely the mob mentality is to react to it and say, I'm not selling for $100,000. And that pushes the floor higher into that infinity pool, theoretical infinity pool range. And that's basically what it comes down to, is that we own the float and then some, so they have to pay us whatever we want. And that's the nature of the squeeze. That squeeze, when you short a stock, there's infinite risk. And there's that theoretical infinite risk. It might not always be infinite risk, but theoretically there's infinite risk there. And so the more of us who lock into that mentality of I'm not going to sell until it's absolutely stupid prices, the higher that floor becomes. And that's kind of how they calculate that floor, based on this, basically on how pissed off they are, I think, is how the floor gets calculated. There's not really any formula that I've seen that accurately represents what that floor is, because it's all based upon human emotion at this point. Did I miss any super chats in there? Sasha Avramov. Oh, thank you for the super chat there. I think I got all those ones. All right. Cool. All right, so we can go to the main chat here until another super chat pops up. And okay. Looking for those question marks. Chris Taylor: if the gravity of a collapsed star to a black hole does not change, then how do black holes feed? Is it simply a matter of time before the matter in that solar system spirals in? The black holes will feed different ways. So the center of gravity doesn't change. So like if the sun today were to magically turn to a black hole, the orbit of Earth and the other planets would not change, would not be affected, because the center of gravity is exactly the same. Most of these black holes that feed are probably in binary systems or other close clusters. And what you have is you might have the center of gravity of that black hole, and then you have another star that's aging. And as that star ages and it goes from burning, fusing hydrogen into fusing helium, it inflates. And it might go from fusing helium into carbon, and it inflates again. It might go from fusing carbon into oxygen or whatever, and it inflates again. So as the star gets larger and larger, its sphere of influence passes into the sphere of influence of the black hole, and that material can start to feed into that black hole. And that's when you get the accretion prism, where all the stuff starts accelerating at super high speeds and superheating as it falls in, and that's when black holes will give off their light. And then you can have instances where another body passes by and gets close enough to the gravitational sphere of influence of the black hole that it will fall in. And that's usually how black holes feed. Can't stop, won't stop, GameStop. How about the 1.9 trillion in derivatives the top 15 banks have as liabilities? I saw a blurb about that. I don't know enough to give you a good answer on those liabilities. That might be a reason why the government said, "Hey, dude, you need more capital. You've got too many liabilities. You need more capital." So let's look into that deeper. Can't stop, won't stop. PB. Uncle Biden just announced an extension to freeze federal student loan payment until 2022. Will that count toward new or old debt ceiling? Sounds like large. Um, I don't know if it affects the debt ceiling. I think it just freezes it, like pauses it for now, and then 2022 is when it will pick up again. Uh, so you know the I'm all for wiping out student debt. I don't think if you go to public college that you should pay through the nose. It should be like going to elementary school or high school. It just you're getting education, you're bettering yourself. Worry about paying off that cost later because so much of college costs are administration, and the administration exists solely to deal with federal student loans. And you can wipe out a ton of information, a ton of bureaucracy, and make that school so much cheaper in the end. Same thing with healthcare. There's 800,000 doctors in the United States and 1.3 million administrators dealing with health insurance. So, if you just covered people, you wouldn't have to worry about trying to rectify all these bills and insurance and stuff like that, and you could just get rid of all that cost. I'm glad they're freezing the student loan payments for a while longer, but I'm for them just wiping it out. And I'd have no problem either. Like wipe out the current student debt and cut a check for those who already paid off their loans. I have no problem with that. The we complain about people aren't getting married and they're not having kids and they're not buying houses. And these younger generations are delaying their adulthood by 10, 20 years now as a result. And it's because they're strapped with debt that basically can never go away. If you've got $100,000 in student debt, you're paying on it for 20 years, and guess what happens after 20 years? You have $200,000 in student debt. You never once touched the what's the word? the main portion of your debt. You never touched the prime there, and it's such a dumb system. And other countries don't have this problem. You go to school in Norway, college is free. You go to school in Germany, college is free. You go to school in Great Britain, college might not be free, but it's at least cheap. So other generations and other nations don't have this problem. I'm all for making just make college free. Let people go to school, become skilled, and enter the workforce like with a leg up rather than like a boot on the back of their neck. Pastor Blunt around vax mandates in New York, slippery slope of government abuse. I don't think so. We've got vax mandates for all sorts of things. If you want to send your kid to elementary school, you've got to have a vaccine card for them. I don't think it's too outside the realm to say if you want to go to a movie theater or a restaurant or on a cruise or an airplane of having proof of vaccination. I'm okay with that. We live in a society, and this plague that's running rampant through our population is going to hinder us for years if we don't get a handle on it. And the hospitalization rates right now, the average stay in hospital for a COVID patient is between like 14 and 30 days at a cost of $125,000 per day. So, $4,000 a day. So $125,000 per person is the average hospital cost for a COVID patient. And, we're looking at something that, sorry, one sec. My roommates are playing loud music. That we're looking at a situation where, if we get enough people hospitalized, we could be paying trillions and trillions, like a significant portion of our entire GDP, on just hospital stays for people that have to be intubated. The numbers were astounding. The King's College in London ran the numbers that were was April of last year. Like, hey, if you don't mitigate, this is what you're looking at. In the next 90 days, you're going to be having 50,000 Americans dead a day, and 2.5 million getting affected a day. And of those 2.5 million, 10 to 20% are hospitalized every single day. We only have 1 million hospital beds in the United States total. So there's no way we can sustain high infection rates having, if we get 200,000 people infected a day and 10% of those have to get hospitalized, that's 20,000 a day. So every 5 days we had 100,000 people to the hospitals. So it only takes, a month or so before the hospital's overflowing and we have to start using, parking lots and stadiums and high school gyms and stuff. So, if we want to put an end to this pandemic, you just got to stick that thing in your arm and get it done. that's the only way I see it. The 1904, what was the ruling by Supreme Court? Basically said that they can mandate vaccinations and mask wearing and things like that if they wanted to. So it's a special circumstance, and we live in a society, and we have to try and protect that society as best we can. And if we're mired in rolling lockdowns for the next decade because of this novel virus, and a large portion of the population isn't willing to do anything about it, and the virus keeps mutating because there's huge population pools for it to have higher likelihood of mutations, then we're gonna be stuck in this life for a long time. And the United States, with all its wealth and privilege, we need to not just focus on our own people, but we need to focus on getting the rest of the world vaccinated, because these countries who have less means, there's going to be variants that come out of them because their populations aren't vaccinated, and that's going to come back to the U.S. and it's going to wreak havoc again. So we need to work with the rest of the world and just try to end this thing as best we can. So I don't see it's slippery slope of government abuse. And a lot of people are like, the people who aren't vaccinated get put in camps. No, they're not. They're going to end up in the ICU ward. That's where they're not going to go to camps. They're going to go on ventilators. And that's it's going to be a massive self-selection at this point. It's largely because it's a split along ideological lines. If you are on the left, you're more likely to be vaccinated. If you're on the right, you're less likely to be vaccinated. And we're going to see a strange political change, I think, as a result of losing an appreciable percentage of folks on one side of the political spectrum. Right now, the Delta variant, the death rate's like 3.5%, maybe higher. And that's with hospital beds being available. The minute hospital beds aren't available, that death rate goes to like 10%. So if less than 30% of Republicans are vaccinated, and that's remaining 70%, let's say it's, I don't know, 50 million people, right? So the 50 million people that aren't vaccinated, they're all going to get the coronavirus, because this virus is looking to eventually become an endemic virus. So all 50 million of those people are going to get this disease. If current numbers are true, and between 17 and 20% are hospitalized, that's 10 million people that are hospitalized. And if 20% of those die, that's 2 million more deaths. So, in elections where 2 million makes a huge difference, that could solidify elections for the Democrats for the next generation or two. So if you are a Republican and you don't want to be under the rule of Democrats, you should probably get vaccinated and keep that from happening. That's my political logical turn for you. I don't like seeing people die. I want you folks to live long, healthy, prosperous lives, and please don't die because of some weird ideology of thinking that there's like robots in your vaccine or something. Just get vaccinated and save people's lives. Save your own. Save everyone else's. Okay. Oops. Sheep ducking cow. You see Larry Page, Google co-founder, just bought himself a New Zealand residency, $7 million, and you too can buy safely from climate crisis. Yeah, there's quite a few of them that have done that, that have bought citizenships in places like New Zealand. Yeah, New Zealand's probably a great place to wait out the climate change problems there. Yeah. Okay. Peter Joyce says he works in a small hospital. They have 80 COVID patients. 74 of them did not receive the vaccine. Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. And there's breakthrough cases. A former person I taught with at the Art Institute got COVID last year, got vaccinated, and he just got over COVID again. He said the second time around was just as bad. So there's breakthrough cases that can happen. And not everyone has strong immune systems, so they might not have the best ability to have the vaccine work on them. They might have chemo, autoimmune disorders, and other things that can keep the vaccines from working that great. So the idea is we get a large amount of herd immunity, and then all of a sudden the risk to those folks who have those autoimmune disorders are much lower. So do your part. Get stabbed. Cartoon pilot. Came for the GME, stayed for the geology. Anyway, have a 6-year-old who likes rocks. Any tips on where to take him in the Northeast that would be interesting? Ooh. Okay, so I'm not super great at the Northeast. I do know there's cool locations like Herkimer Diamonds in Herkimer, New York. Great place to go. There's labradorite. There's cool labradorite deposits in New England. You can look for in Franklin, New Jersey for all sorts of crazy crystals. There's great places you can get rhodonite in New Jersey. Fossils galore everywhere. In the Boston area, you can look for tektites because there was a big meteorite impact there millions and millions of years ago, and the ground superheated, melted, and blew out into space, and then fell back to Earth again. These like weird molten black teardrops. So you can look for tektites there. There's also spinels. You can find the largest spinel ever found, which is a really ugly, looked like a giant, I don't know, isosceles turd. Was found in upstate New York. And you can look for gold too. There's gold in Maine. There's gold in New York. There's gold in those things. So yeah. Those are places I suggest. And always look for Gemtrails books. If you can find Gemtrails books for whatever state you're going to, there'll be tons of stuff in there. And then mindat.org is a great location, great site. Let me type that in here. Mindat.org. So it's in the chat now. That's a great place to look for particular regions. You can say, hey, you can type in a place, type in Ireland, and it will show you all the stones you can find in Ireland and where you can find them. You type in Montana. You can make a specific county in Montana. It will tell you what stones have been found there. Basically, there's a lot of mines that exist that might be looking for lead or looking for gold or looking for silver, but when they're in the mines, they find other weird crystals, and so they'll pop those. They'll feed it like, hey, I found alexandrite in this mine in New Mexico, and so you can go look for like little microcrystals of cool things like alexandrite. Mindat's a really cool page to look at. Okay. All right, so that was Cartoon Pilot's question. Ethan O'Green, it really sucks, but I think you and others are overestimating the effectiveness of these vaccines, especially when it comes to mutant variants. Also not a Republican, super far left. Yeah, I mean, the longer we go, the likelihood of vaccines that defeat the efficacy, the likelihood of variants that defeat the efficacy of the vaccine are there. That's why we need to get as many people vaccinated with whatever vaccines that work as fast as possible. The rollouts have been pathetic. We need more of it, and we need better vaccines. The AstraZeneca vaccine is garbage. May as well not even be vaccinated with the AstraZeneca. It's useless. So there's not enough out there. Okay. KD, I'm not smart enough to ask you a question except when AMC moon. Love the comment. Love the content. Well, thank you. When AMC moon? When the economy takes a giant dump, I think, was when AMC is going to moon. I think that's when we're going to see the margin calls happen, is when the economy gets to a point that people can't ignore it anymore and can't pass that buck. And right now AMC is playing this T35 game of hot potato as it passes around in these debt swaps. I wouldn't want to be the last fund holding that when the music stops. Okay. Tom Siegel, Houston, what do you think about the theory that when you have a vaccine that prevents bad symptoms but doesn't actually kill the virus, it actually just helps the virus mutate into something worse? That is possible. The thing is that the reason why the vaccines work is that the virus will still enter your nose and your mouth and maybe your eyes and like the normal ways that virus can enter the human body, and it will start attaching itself to the cells in your body trying to replicate. And you've got a system now inside your body that recognizes this invader and starts attacking it with antibodies, and it kills it in your mouth and in nose before it ever reaches your lungs or passes into your bloodstream or enters your heart or other organs, which is where the illness gets really bad. So the gestation and the length of viral infection is really short for the vaccinated people. So the odds of it mutating inside those folks is very low. So if you can get a whole population vaccinated, then the virus doesn't have enough time to mutate and to create new variants that will defeat the efficacy of the vaccine. The problem is that we've got large swaths of the population that refuse to vaccinate. And so when they get infected, the virus replicates in the nose, replicates in the mouth, replicates in the eyeballs, and then passes down to the lungs, starts replicating in there, gets into the bloodstream, starts replicating there, gets into the heart, starts replicating there, gets in the liver, the kidneys, the gut, other places, and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of generations happen in millions of people all at once. And so then there's the odds that the virus can then mutate in such a way that, say, the spike protein looks completely different and attaches maybe in a different way to the cells all of a sudden. And that's what passes on to the person who's vaccinated. And that's how the efficacy for the vaccine starts to get defeated. Because if the virus changes in such a way that the antibodies no longer recognize it and can no longer attack it, then it has the opportunity to spread into the lungs and into the blood supply and so on. That's the issue we have. And that's basically what happens every year with the flu, is that we get a new flu vaccine. I think the flu is going to look like this, so everyone gets injected, but not everybody gets the vaccine. And those folks might be protected for that year, but by the next year, the virus is mutated enough, and it has the opportunity to infect everybody all over again. These RNA viruses, they mutate really quickly. We can look at the difference in the genes from one person who infected another person, and we can map the genome of them, and we see it fork and spike in different areas as those infections carry on. It's gnarly, man. Dealing with a novel virus is something I wish I never lived to see. I would like to have gone my entire life without having a novel pandemic take over the earth and just ruin everyone's day constantly. Okay. All right. Let's see if we can change the subject from vaccines for a bit and talk about something else more fun. Dark Latin. If talcum powder can be linked to cancer, how can anyone claim we'd be safe 5 years from now? Why are these companies not held accountable if something goes wrong? That's true. Baby powder is talc, and for decades, Johnson & Johnson knew that there was cancer risk associated with talcum powder. Essentially, talcum powder is these fibrous little things that can essentially have the potential to augment DNA and make, the minute you change DNA, you raise the risk of cancer. And they hid that information for decades to keep selling their product. And now they are facing lots of lawsuits on that. Big corporations will hide that stuff all the time. I mean, cigarette manufacturers tried to create their own scientific research institutions. They're like, no, smoking's fine. It's great. I'm Dr. So-and-so. I was paid $1 million to say that smoking is good for your health. And they lost a $100 billion lawsuit. Right now, who are the folks that created the Oxys, the Saddlers? What's their company? Purdue Pharmaceutical. Those guys are facing giant lawsuits. Johnson & Johnson got a lawsuit for their opiates because they were claiming these things weren't addictive. They were fine. They were then basically acting like legal drug dealers and they sent enough doses to West Virginia so that every single person in West Virginia had like 20,000 doses of opiates. It's just nuts. So these companies, when they do this stuff, they will do wrong things, and they'll lie about it and they'll fudge data. So that's something you have to worry about. I totally agree. Yeah. Oh yeah, Suicide premieres tonight, doesn't it? Suicide Squad, Dark Latin. Yeah, I heard it slaps. The original one was absolute hot garbage, but I heard this one is pretty darn good, so I'm gonna watch it. I don't have any AMC theaters near me though, so I'll probably watch it on HBO. Okay. Low key jabroni. Any thoughts on Bob Lazar claiming to have worked on alien tech, gravity propulsion drives, insane implications, something like that? That's out there. I think Bob Lazar is a charlatan. He did like a semester of community college. He claims he's a physics professor. That man is not. He's a charlatan. There's a few of them out there. I do think there's some legit folks out there that are much more extraordinary and much more likely to be believed about UFOs and alien tech and things like that. But Bob Lazar is not one of them. He's a liar. He's just a straight up liar. I mean, the dude keeps getting busted for like money laundering and drug dealing and things like that. He's not. I don't believe a word out of that man's mouth. He's not a physicist. He's a high school graduate who did one semester of community college and then told everyone he was a physicist who worked for the government. Nope. I think he may have been a janitor somewhere. that was probably it. And otherwise, he like moves radioactive chemicals without safety stuff and gets busted for that. Like, I don't trust him. Okay. Thoughts on Operation Paperclip, Heat Inferno. Those of you who don't know Operation Paperclip, it was the U.S. government's operation to get really, really smart scientists out of Nazi Germany after the war. So they basically were like, okay, you might be a horrible Nazi, you did horrible things, but we need you for our rocket program, or we need you for our nuclear program. And they took these people out of Germany, let them avoid prosecution for war crimes, and then put them to work at NASA, at Fermi Labs, at Los Alamos, at Sandia Laboratories, at Lawrence Livermore. And a lot of these bad German Nazis, such as the gentleman who ran their entire space program, were straight up Nazis, and they ended up helping the United States advance scientifically really, really fast. And the Russians had their own program. Basically, U.S. came from one direction, Russia came from the other, and they were racing to gather as many of these scientists as possible and abscond with them to their relative nations. So everyone was doing it. It was all the rage at the end of World War II to steal scientists. So a lot of scientific advancements in the United States and in Russia were the result of Nazi scientists who should have probably hung at Nuremberg. Hanged at Nuremberg, but because of their skills and expertise, avoided such fate. There's also there's that funny joke. Someone tweeted, they're like, why do all these Argentinian Olympians have German last names? Gee, I wonder why a whole bunch of Argentinian Olympians have German last names. The Nazis escaping, man. Okay. Got a smooth gaudy beats. We're facing major headwinds on the Wyden Loomis Toomey Amendment. GME NFT, what's that about if you have a clue about it? I've only read the little blurb right before I hopped on the air, but it looks like some stupid senator who doesn't know anything about crypto decided to outlaw proof of work and force crypto to only do mining, which is just dumb, and that would hurt the NFT being issued. So basically, GameStop would have to issue their NFT before that amendment would ever get approved. Hopefully, the amendment won't be approved and will be rejected from the infrastructure bill. But this is one of those things where we're going to start to see all sorts of weird. They know this bill is going to pass. They've got enough Republican support. So now what they're trying to do is they're going to try and take weird little pet projects for probably evil people and attach them to this bill, because we need the infrastructure. So it's going to pass, and they're going to hope that they can attach enough of their little turds to this that their donors will be pleased. I think it's silly. It's a really bad move, and it's going to create a weird black market with crypto that's even worse than right now. as people try to avoid these restrictions. Okay. I mean, there probably should be somebody related to Ethereum right now who is lobbying and paying a bunch of money to the Congress people to fight this amendment. Ethereum's worth billions, so he might as well spend some of that money on that. Let's see here. All right, we're at 2:15. I got 15 minutes. I have to go meet a friend for a late lunch, so I got to be out of here at 2:30. So let's see here if we can find some good ones. Everton Lacerda. NASA is hiring astronauts for Mars mission. Will you apply? Hell no. I applied for the astronaut program about 5 years ago and didn't make it. First of all, I've got broken bones, so I could never be allowed to be an astronaut for NASA. If you've ever had a fracture or a broken bone, you cannot be an astronaut. Sorry to burst your bubble there, but because of the how much calcium leaches from your bones when you're in 0G, if you've had fractures, you're very likely to compound those suckers and break them again. So I would never be allowed. But going to Mars, I think, is largely going to be a death sentence. The perchlorate in the soil is something you can't get dust anywhere near any Martian dust. So you're going to be hermetically sealed the entire time you go to Mars. Because if you get any of that dust, any of your equipment that then gets on you, you're screwed. Your entire thyroid will shut down and your immune system will stop working, and you could go septic at any time. So yeah, I will not be going to Mars. I'd rather go to the moon or to an asteroid or something that's cool and worthwhile. Mars isn't worth it. Not worth the effort. But other people can go to Mars and go die on live television. Mike Millspa, Houston, any opinions as to the electric vehicle industry stock plays per current? Proposed U.S. government rules, regulations, electric vehicle battery recycling, electric vehicle charging, networks for electric vehicle battery technology, lithium, nickel, etc. mining. I got lots of thoughts on it. I do think with current technology, we should have a standardized battery. And that standardized battery should be able to be easily removed from a vehicle and replaced instantaneously. So what I'd love to see is, instead of these charging stations where people plug their cars in for 8 hours to charge, I would love to see, you go to a gas station, they come out with a dolly, they take the battery out and they put it into a charger and they bring a freshly charged one, put it in, and in a minute, your car is ready to go again. That would totally help the electric car industry because people take long drives. They drive from state to state, they go across the nation. And if you have to stop every 300 miles to charge for 8 hours, it can take forever to get to where you need to go. So having the ability to just swap those batteries out would be an awesome move to do. If they could standardize that, that'd be fantastic. Lithium mining, nickel mining are gnarly. Nickel mining it's something we're going to be doing anyway, but the exposed sulfur dioxides that happen, your pyrites and stuff like that, those create sulfuric acid, which then goes in the groundwater supply and can ruin groundwater supply. So that's why I love the idea of space mining, because you don't have to worry about that from a nickel asteroid. Lithium mining is really gnarly. We saw, the overthrow of the democratically elected government in Bolivia by essentially lithium mining interests, and even Elon Musk basically admitted that he helped overthrow that government. And when someone complained about his involvement, he was like, "Hey, man, we'll overthrow anybody we want to." Kind of a dick move. But I do think that there's going to be advancements in battery technology that will make mining that lithium no longer needed. Talked about it before, but the aluminum ion batteries from graphene graphene manufacturing group is a pretty cool potential. There's other cool sources out there, the electrolyte batteries and these weird fuel cells and stuff that have great potential. So I think that we're going to see big advancements in the tech, and we're going to see even bigger advancements with traditional automotive companies moving into electric cars. That Tesla will no longer be the innovator. That we'll probably see big innovations from big companies, Ford, GM, Volkswagen, Volvo, stuff like that. Jason Boucher, funny story. During a spring vacation to St. Louis, I asked locals where to find a good morel spot. Got sent to Weldon Spring, a dump site for the Manhattan Project. Probably go searching at night and those morels will be glowing. Smooth Gotti Beats. Do you believe in Hollow Earth and the entrances to it? They're called dwellers. I do not believe in Hollow Earth. The way planets form is they're hot balls of molten goo, and all the heavy stuff sinks to the middle, and all the light stuff floats to the top. So the inside of the Earth is super dense. It's like 15 grams per cubic centimeter, and it's really hot, thousands of degrees. And I don't think there's a Hollow Earth. It was really funny to watch that Godzilla vs. Kong movie where they go to the Hollow Earth. And like, where's the light source coming from? Hopefully it just glows. It makes movies fun, but no, I don't believe in Hollow Earth theory. We've got too much evidence of iron asteroids out in space that were the centers of planets got blown up by bigger objects to go by the Hollow Earth theory. They're fun things to read about, but no, I don't believe in it. Peter, will metamaterial hit above $100 when we squeeze? I have no idea. I wouldn't doubt if we see something in the realm of Newegg where it hits like $77 or $79 when it finally popped. I don't think that's out of the question. So if it goes above 100, fantastic. That'd be awesome. But I have no idea. None. Zero. I'm still flabbergasted that it became a squeeze to begin with. Yeah. So, yeah. Get Real says, Houston, someone reported you to YouTube for giving false vax info, so stop talking about it. Well, YouTube's not going to ban me for telling people to get vaccinated. They can report me all day long, but I'm not going to be cornered by anti-vaxxers. They're on the wrong side of history on this, and I know that for a fact. So, yeah, they can report me all day long. Okay. Ryan Bavetta, most Tesla superchargers can now recharge up to 200 miles of range in just 15 minutes. That's pretty good. But having to stop every 200 miles is really annoying. I can't wait for the batteries to be 1,000-mile batteries before they need to recharge or further. I keep getting advertisements on my social media for some company called like Avo. They've got this sleek carbon fiber car. It's like covered in solar panels and is really light, and it does like 1,000 miles of charge. But the price is absolutely insanely expensive, so I won't be buying one. King Garla Pig? King Gorilla Pig? Is that what that is? Asks, if the amendment goes through and GME cannot provide a unique dividend, then what do you suggest is the best option to force a MOASS? Do you list from NASDAQ and list on Frankfurt, Japan? Ooh, that's interesting. Would they have to change their headquarters to do that? From Grapevine, Texas, and change their headquarters to Germany or Japan to do that? I'm not sure how that works. Because we do have foreign companies that trade on the U.S. markets, but that's because our laws allowed that. Yeah. So, that's an interesting point to raise. I think that there may be legal battles against this amendment from happening, from essentially favoring one form of cryptocurrency over the other that might show governmental favoritism. So I'm not sure the amendment would last. I'm sure the lawyers will definitely pile on board that. But it may be something that's a big speed bump in the meantime. So it's something to write your Congress members about for sure. Okay. Okay. Let's find some questions here. Will Walt talking about the 3M dumping incident of the stuff that make non-stick pans. They're referred to as double piss. Yeah, the materials they use to make Teflon are pretty gnarly. If you can't avoid Teflon, I would avoid Teflon. It's if Teflon was a product that came out today, I do not think it would pass FDA approval. I don't think they would be allowed to do it. It creates these weird synthetic hormones, and cancerous material comes off of the process, and like there's swaths of areas outside these factories that are just toxic as a result. There's lots of technology we use today and over-the-counter drugs we use that if today they came out, they probably wouldn't let us. I doubt they would let us. I doubt Tylenol would be allowed today if it was invented today. I think that the side effects from things like Tylenol in the population as a whole would be too great that they would never allow it to be over the counter. But because they allowed it over the counter before we had these things in place, it just exists now. It's just like, oh, it's grandfathered in, and so on. Okay. Daniel Moatz. What's the easiest way to convince someone the MOASS will happen and is slowly happening now? Oh man, what is the easiest way to do that? First, you have to explain to them the mechanics behind it. You have to explain how shorting is supposed to take place. And you have to explain to them how shorting is taking place. Traditionally shorting is supposed to be you borrow shares in a stock, you pay your interest on it, you sell that stock, and then you wait for it to drop, and you go back and you buy those shares and you replace them. That's the traditional shorting. Then you have to explain the naked shorting, which is you just create shares out of thin air, you short them as much, you sell them as much as possible, and you dilute the float, and it drives down the price because of supply and demand until it drives to zero and you've destroyed a company. That's the system that we're facing. So if you can get the person to understand those concepts and what mechanics are taking place, then you can talk about the buy and hold strategy and how if you keep buying and holding, the strategy of convincing retail to sell and further drive the price down does not work. And if you can do that, do those things, I think you're on the right track to talk to somebody about the easiest way to convince them that the MOASS will happen. And you can start to point them to the fact that every once in a while we get huge panics out of the short hedge funds, and we have bots showing up to people's Twitter feeds and YouTube feeds. We've got articles that keep trying to explain this thing is over, but then obviously the price goes back up to 350 again, so it's not over. So they can start to see that there's a whole bunch of liars on the other side, and they're desperate. And so it's cheaper for them to lie and lie and lie and lie than it is to close their positions. And so that's what they're going to keep doing. So that's how I'd go about it. All right, we'll do one more question, and then I've got to go meet my friend for lunch here. Eddie B, what are Superfund sites? How can we help as private citizens? Superfund sites, the Superfund was set up to basically use public funds to clean up industrial waste. So it's this big giant fund with billions of dollars in it used to spend. I've got a Superfund site. I'll bring up Google Earth. Why not? I haven't done Google Earth at all today, and I got this whole new thing set up. So let's Google Earth this bad boy. Google Earth. Boom. All right. So I got Google Earth. Where I am. Zoom in into Seattle. And we zoom in, and we're going to Bainbridge Island right here. So this is Bainbridge Island. This is the main urban area. This is Winslow, the town. Across the way is this point called Bill Point. This used to be a creosote plant. It was actually a little town called Creosote, and there's a whole bunch of company homes here, company homes and little stores. It's now forest. But this is was a big giant factory for creating creosote out of bitumen and tar and whatever else. And if you had a telephone pole, you had to coat it in that creosote. If you had a piling that you drive in for a dock or a pier, you'd coat it in creosote. And that all happened here. And there's tons of heavy metals and petroleum byproducts that just leach into the soil for years. And so this site here, they've got these weird wells. You can see these pipes coming through. And what they do is they pump really hot water down into the soil, and it steams up and brings up those heavy metals, and then they try to clear them off. And they built this giant wall that surrounds everything, and these huge metal pilings go down like 100 feet to keep any of that stuff from seeping into the harbor as a whole. And this thing's been going on for 30 years at a cost of about $1 billion now. And it will never end. It will just go and go and go forever. So the Superfund site was funding to help keep this thing clean and keep from polluting the harbor. There's other Superfund sites, like you go across the water, and let's see, you got to go up to Edmonds area, which is up, Indianola there. Here we go. So here is a whole bunch of point wells. These were tanks, storage for oil, and they would pump the oil and stick it here, and then the other ships come up, pick it up, and take it to refineries or put it on trains and things to other refineries. And there's tons of leakage here for all these oil sites. And so there's another Superfund site that they're slowly trying to clean up. A lot of Superfund sites, they didn't clean very well. So I can't remember the exact location in Los Angeles, but throughout Southern California, there were lots of sites where people, sucked oil out of the ground and had storage tanks for oil, and those things leaked like crazy. So their Superfund solution was to basically take a bunch of topsoil, cover all of it, and build houses. And then 20 years later, everyone's kid had leukemia. And they're like, why the heck do all these kids have leukemia? And they discover that, they only covered it in 8 inches of topsoil. And then the kids are playing in the grass all day long, and all those toxins were getting sucked up by the grass and concentrating at the top layer of soil. And so there's huge lawsuits that go on over those Superfund sites. A lot of Superfund sites work on abandoned mines because the exposed sulfurs create sulfuric acid and poison water supplies and make their way down river and stuff. So that's what the Superfund was largely for. Lots of places in the Northeast, cities like Cleveland that had the Cuyahoga River catch on fire due to industrial waste. There's lots of Superfund sites along there. They're all over the place. So that's what the Superfund was used for. As a private citizen, not much you can do to help. It's all tax dollars that go to it. What we need from citizens is, perhaps getting the government to be like, hey, this place is toxic. Help us fix this. And forcing the polluters to actually clean up after themselves or not pollute in the first place. All right. Woo! Frogs are turning gay. All right. I got to go, people. Thanks so much. I might pop on at some point this weekend randomly if I've got a window to chat with everyone. I want to thank you so much for joining me for this lovely Friday day where it actually rained outside in Seattle for the first time in a while. Yeah. And we'll talk more. Thank you. Enjoy your day.